The monitors beep faster. Another contraction rips through me, and I squeeze the bed rail so hard my knuckles turn white. Nurses rush around, checking machines, adjusting my fore. The pain is unbearable, like my body is being torn in half from the inside out. But the chair beside my bed is empty. My husband's chair. The one he should be sitting in, holding my hand, telling me everything will be okay. Instead, his mother sits in the corner. Sipping coffee from a paper cup like this is just another Tuesday afternoon. "Stop overreacting, dear," Patricia says without looking up from her phone. "Women have been doing this for thousands of years." I try to breathe through another wave of pain. "Where's Brandon?" Gasp. Patricia sighs like I've asked the stupidest question in the world. "Brandon's at the gala, obviously. This isn't about you tonight." The door opens. My doctor walks in, her face serious. She looks at Patricia, then at me. "Who has medical power of attorney here?" Patricia straightens in her chair, setting down her coffee. "That would be me, of course." The doctor flips through papers on her clipboard and shakes her head. "Actually, we already have it on file. Signed by her sister, Claire Matthews." Patricia's confident smile freezes on her face. "What?" "My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 29 years old, and that moment in the delivery room was when I realized I wasn't completely alone anymore. But to understand why that mattered so much, you need to know how I got there. Stay with me until the end, and I'll show you exactly how one night changed everything. I met Brandon when I was 25. He was charming, always knew the right thing to say, made me laugh when I was sad. After I lost both my parents in a car accident the year before, I was desperate for family, for belonging. Brandon's family seemed perfect. His mother, Patricia, welcomed me with open arms. Well, sort of. The first time we met, she hugged me and said, "Welcome to the family, dear. I'm the other woman in your marriage." Then she laughed like it was a joke. Brandon laughed too. I didn't. Looking back now, I should have known right then. But I was lonely, and they were all I had. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony that Patricia mostly planned. Our first anniversary should have been special. I made reservations at the restaurant where Brandon proposed, bought a new dress, even got my hair done. I was excited, imagining a romantic evening, just the two of us. At 5 o'clock, Brandon called. "I can't make it tonight, Liv. Mom needs help setting up for her charity event tomorrow. It's a big deal." "But it's our anniversary," I said quietly. "She's family," he replied like that explained everything. "You'll understand when you're a mother." I sat alone at our dining room table that night, watching candles melt down to nothing. I ate leftover pizza and tried not to cry. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. It was a photo of her and Brandon at some fancy venue, both smiling, both dressed up. The caption said, "My boy always comes through." I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed. That was the first crack. But I told myself I was overreacting, being selfish. After all, she was his mother. Patricia started showing up at our house unannounced. She'd walk right in with her spare key, the one Brandon gave her, for emergencies. She'd reorganize my kitchen cabinets, telling me I was doing it all wrong. She'd refold my laundry, sighing loudly about how I didn't know the proper way to fold towels. She'd comment on what I was making for dinner, suggesting her recipes instead. When I told Brandon it bothered me, he just sighed. "She's trying to help, Liv. She raised me. She knows what she's doing." "But this is our home," I said. "It's my home too," he replied. "And she's my mother." One afternoon, Patricia found me crying in the bathroom after she'd criticized everything from my cooking to my cleaning. She put a hand on my shoulder, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You should be grateful I'm showing you how to be a proper wife, dear. Brandon deserves the best." I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded and wiped my eyes. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday morning in March. 3 little words on a plastic stick. Pregnant. I cried with joy, imagining a tiny person with Brandon's eyes and my smile. When I told Brandon that night, he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's great, honey, he said, already looking back at his laptop. That's it. Yes. Just that's great. What do you want me to do, Liv? Jump up and down. I wanted him to be excited, to hug me, to talk about baby names and nursery colors. But he just went back to his work. Patricia insisted on coming to every doctor's appointment. Every single one. She'd sit between me and Brandon, asking questions before I could, making decisions about things that should have been mine to decide. At one appointment the doctor mentioned genetic testing. Patricia leaned forward. Mental illness runs in your family, doesn't it, Olivia? We should definitely test for that. I laughed, trying to play it off, but it stung. Brandon said nothing. I wanted to do a small gender reveal. Just us, maybe my sister Claire, some cake with colored filling inside. Simple and sweet. Patricia had other ideas. She hired a party planner, rented a venue, invited 50 people I'd never met. When I tried to object, Brandon said, "Mom's excited. Just let her have this." "But it's our baby," I said. "And she's going to be the grandmother," he replied, like that settled everything. The day of the party, I felt like a guest at my own event. Patricia stood at the center of everything, directing people, taking photos, acting like the star of the show. When we cut into the cake and saw blue frosting, Patricia screamed, "My boy's having a boy!" She grabbed Brandon and hugged him, jumping up and down. Brandon hugged her back, laughing. He didn't even look at me. My sister Claire found me in the bathroom 10 minutes later, mascara running down my face. She held my shoulders and looked me dead in the eye. "Olivia, you need a plan. This isn't going to get better." Brandon became more distant as my belly grew. He worked late most nights, came home tired and distracted. I tried to talk to him about baby names, about what kind of crib to buy, but he'd just nod and say, "Whatever you think is best." Then I found the credit card statement. Thousands of dollars charged to our joint account for Patricia's upcoming charity gala. Flowers, catering, decorations, a live band. When I confronted Brandon, he barely looked up from his phone. "She'll pay us back, Liv. Relax." "When?" asked. "She's never paid us back before." "She's my mother," he said, like that was supposed to mean something. That night, while Brandon slept, I quietly opened a separate bank account. I transferred my paycheck into it. I wasn't planning to leave yet, but Claire's words echoed in my head. "You need a plan." 7 months pregnant, my blood pressure spiked. The doctor admitted me to the hospital overnight for observation. Brandon stayed for 1 hour before kissing my forehead and saying, "I need to catch up on sleep, babe. I'll see you tomorrow." He left me there, alone, hooked up to machines in a dark room. Patricia showed up the next morning with a coffee and a look of disapproval. "This food looks terrible," she said, poking at my breakfast tray. "Hospital food is always terrible." A nurse came in to check my vitals. "Is there someone we should call if your condition gets worse?" she asked me. Before I could answer, Patricia spoke up. "Me, of course. I'm her mother-in-law." The nurse looked at me for confirmation. I opened my mouth but couldn't find words. I realized with a sinking feeling that I had no one else. No parents. Brandon wouldn't come. Claire lived 2 hours away. I just nodded weakly. Claire visited me the next day and found Patricia's name listed as my emergency contact on all the hospital paperwork. She was furious. "This is insane, Liv," Claire hissed, keeping her voice low so the nurses wouldn't hear. "You need to fix this right now." "How?" I asked, feeling defeated. "We're going to a lawyer. Today." Claire helped me get dressed, signed me out against medical advice, and drove me straight to a legal office downtown. The lawyer explained medical power of attorney to me, how I could designate someone I trusted to make decisions if I couldn't. I signed the papers naming Claire. Then I signed another form, officially revoking any authority Patricia might claim. "Where should we file these?" Claire asked. I thought for a moment, then smiled for the first time in weeks. "Inside my maternity file at the hospital, where no one will think to look." The next week, Patricia showed up at our house with flowers and an apology. "I think we got off on the wrong foot," she said sweetly. Let's start over. I just want to help. She told Brandon she'd step back, give us space, let us be parents. Brandon looked relieved. I wanted to believe her. That night I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs for water and heard Patricia's voice coming from the guest room. She was on the phone with someone, her voice low but clear. She'll learn soon enough who's really in charge, Patricia said with a laugh. Brandon always does what I say. She's no different. I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand on my belly, feeling my baby kick. I went back upstairs and wrote that sentence down in a notebook I'd started keeping, just in case I needed proof later. My best friend Amber wanted to throw me a baby shower. She'd already picked out decorations, sent me photos of cute games we could play. I was excited for once, imagining an afternoon with my actual friends. Then Patricia found out. She called Amber directly and changed everything. The date, the guest list, the venue, even the theme. When I walked into the shower, I didn't recognize a single person except Claire. They were all Patricia's friends, women in their 50s and 60s who smiled politely but barely spoke to me. Patricia stood at the center, opening my gifts, reading cards aloud, acting like she was the one having a baby. When I got home, I cried in the shower for an hour. Brandon found me there and asked what was wrong. Your mother took over my baby shower, I said. He shrugged. You're lucky she's so involved, Liv. Most women don't have that kind of support. That's when I realized he'd never see it. He'd never understand. At 38 weeks pregnant, I was huge, exhausted, and terrified. Patricia's charity gala was scheduled for the following weekend, and Brandon had promised me he'd skip it. I'll be there when the baby comes, he'd said, holding my hand. I promise. But that night Patricia called. I could hear her voice through the phone, sharp and insistent. You'll ruin his reputation if he misses this event, Olivia. Everyone will ask where he is. Everyone will judge him. Brandon's face changed as he listened. When he hung up, he wouldn't look at me. I have to go, he said quietly. You promised, I whispered. It's just one night. You're not even due for another week. I lay in bed that night, one hand on my belly, and whispered to my baby. You and I are our own family. We don't need anyone else. Contractions started at 11 o'clock on Saturday night. Brandon was upstairs getting dressed in his tuxedo for the gala. I grabbed the door frame, breathing through the pain. Brandon, I called. I think it's starting. He came downstairs, adjusting his bow tie. Are you sure? It's probably false labor. Another contraction hit, stronger this time. I gasped, doubling over. I'm sure. He checked his watch. Mom's on her way. She'll take you to the hospital. Brandon, please don't leave me, I begged, tears streaming down my face. Please. He kissed my forehead, his cologne sharp and expensive. You'll be fine. Women do this every day. Then he walked out the front door, car keys jingling in his hand. I heard his car start, heard him drive away. 10 minutes later, my water broke all over the kitchen floor. I tried calling Claire, but she wasn't answering. It was almost midnight. She was probably asleep. My neighbor, Mrs. Morrison from next door, saw my lights on and came over to check. She found me on the floor, crying and contracting. Oh, honey, she said, helping me up. Where's your husband? He left, I sobbed. She drove me to the hospital, one hand on the wheel, the other holding mine. Men are idiots, she muttered. Every last one of them. Patricia met us at the entrance, looking annoyed. We should have waited for Brandon to come back, she said, as if I had any control over when my baby decided to arrive. I screamed through another contraction. He's not coming back, Patricia. She smoothed down her blouse, looking around the emergency room like she was embarrassed. Of course he is, dear. This is his big night. This is my big night, I wanted to scream. But another contraction stole my voice. They got me into a delivery room, hooked me up to monitors. The contractions were coming faster now, harder, each one stealing my breath. The doctor came in, her face serious as she checked my chart. Olivia, we need to discuss something. Your blood pressure is elevated again, and the baby's heart rate is concerning. If things get worse, we might need to do an emergency C-section. Patricia stepped forward immediately. I can make those decisions. I'm her medical proxy. The doctor looked at her, then at me, then back at her chart. She flipped through some papers clipped to the back. Actually, Mrs. Carter, we have a signed medical power of attorney form on file. It designates Claire Matthews as the decision-maker. Patricia's face went white. That's impossible. There must be a mistake. The doctor held up the form, my signature clear at the bottom. No mistake. This was filed 3 weeks ago. Patricia sputtered, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. But I'm family. I'm her mother-in-law. And Claire is her sister, the doctor said calmly. Legally designated. For the first time since I'd known her, Patricia had nothing to say. The pain got worse. The doctor said the baby was in distress. They needed to do the C-section now. I was terrified, alone, being wheeled into an operating room with bright lights and masked faces. I want my sister, I kept saying. Please call my sister. A nurse squeezed my hand. We're trying, honey. We're trying. Then, just as they were prepping me for surgery, the door burst open. Claire ran in, still in her pajamas, her hair wild, eyes red from crying. I'm here, she gasped, grabbing my hand. I'm so sorry. My phone died. But I'm here now. I sobbed with relief. The doctor said, Okay, Olivia. Let's meet your baby. 10 minutes later I heard crying. Not my crying. My baby's crying. Congratulations, Mom, the doctor said, holding up a tiny, perfect, screaming baby boy. You did it. Claire was crying. I was crying. And Brandon was nowhere. Brandon stumbled into the hospital room 3 hours later. His tuxedo rumpled, smelling like champagne and cologne. He was smiling, that stupid drunk smile that made my stomach turn. Did I miss it? He asked, leaning against the doorframe. I was holding our son, my body still aching from surgery, my eyes swollen from crying. I looked at Brandon like he was a stranger. Miss it? I repeated quietly. Claire stood up from her chair, her voice cold as ice. You didn't miss it, Brandon. You missed her birth. Not it. Her name is Oliver. Your son. Brandon blinked, the smile fading from his face. He looked at the baby in my arms, then at me, then at Claire. I thought you weren't due until next week, he stammered. Babies don't wait for galas, Claire said. But apparently you do. I didn't say anything. I just held Oliver closer and turned my face toward the window. By the next morning, social media had exploded. Someone at the gala had taken photos of Brandon, posted them online with timestamps. Brandon in a tuxedo, holding champagne. Brandon laughing with his mother. Brandon posing for pictures. All while I was in surgery, giving birth to his son. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friends texting me asking if I was okay. Strangers commenting on the photos. Imagine partying while your wife is in labor. What kind of husband does this? This is disgusting. One post went viral. Someone had screenshotted the gala photos next to the hospital visitor log showing Claire's name but not Brandon's. The caption read, "He partied while his wife gave birth alone." Thousands of people shared it. Thousands of people judged him. And for once, I didn't feel guilty about it. Brandon came home 2 days later, defensive and angry. "Everyone's attacking me online," he said. "This is ridiculous. I didn't know you'd go into labor early." I was sitting on the couch, Oliver sleeping in my arms. "You knew I was close. You knew I was scared. And you chose a party over me." "It wasn't just a party," he snapped. "It was important for my career, for my mother's foundation." "And what about your son?" I asked quietly. "Was he important?" Brandon ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "You're making this into a bigger deal than it is." Claire, who'd been staying with us to help, walked into the room. "She almost died, Brandon. The doctor said another 20 minutes and they would have lost both of them." Brandon went pale. No one told me it was that serious. Because you weren't here, I said. You were too busy smiling for cameras. That night, I slept in the guest room. I couldn't even look at him. At Oliver's 2-week checkup, the doctor smiled at us. Everything looks great. And just to confirm, Olivia, your sister is still your medical proxy, correct? Brandon, who'd insisted on coming to this appointment, frowned. What are you talking about? The doctor looked confused. The medical power of attorney. Claire Matthews is listed as the person who can make decisions if Olivia is incapacitated. Brandon stared at me. Since when? Since 3 weeks before I gave birth, I said calmly. When your mother tried to take control of my medical care. The doctor handed Brandon a copy of the form. He read it, his face going from confused to pale to angry in seconds. You did this behind my back. I did it to protect myself, I corrected. Because I couldn't trust you to be there. He couldn't argue. 'Cause I'd been right. I started separating our finances. Quietly, carefully, I moved my money out of our joint account into the one I'd opened months earlier. I documented every expense, every bill, every dollar. Claire helped me contact a lawyer. We talked about custody, about divorce, about what my rights were. Brandon noticed the missing money. What the hell, Olivia? Where's all our savings? You mean my savings, I said. The money I've been earning while you've been funding your mother's lifestyle. You can't just take our money. I can take my money, I replied. And I can protect my son's future. He yelled, called me paranoid, accused me of overreacting. But I didn't back down. You left me bleeding in a hospital bed so you could impress your mother and her rich friends, I said, my voice steady. There's no coming back from that, Brandon. Brandon tried to win me back. He bought flowers. He wrote apology notes. He cried and begged and promised he'd change. But every time he opened his mouth, Patricia's voice came out. Mom didn't mean any harm. Mom's going through a hard time. Can't you forgive Mom? Never, I'm sorry. Never, I was wrong. One morning I slid divorce papers across the kitchen table. Brandon stared at them like they were written in a foreign language. You can't be serious, he whispered. I've never been more serious in my life. But we have a son together. Exactly, I said. And I need to show him that it's not okay to treat people like this. That women deserve better. He didn't sign right away. But I knew he would eventually. Because even Brandon wasn't stupid enough to think I'd stay. Brandon's perfect reputation fell apart. The charity that Patricia ran lost sponsors after the party during labor scandal. People whispered at events. Friends stopped calling. Patricia's social circle evaporated overnight. Women who'd once praised her now crossed the street to avoid her. The woman who'd built her identity on being the perfect mother, the perfect philanthropist, was suddenly a joke. Brandon called me one night, his voice broken. Can we talk, please? Just the two of us. No, I said. Olivia. Hung up. Claire, sitting next to me on the couch, squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. For the first time in years I felt proud of myself too. 6 months later, I'd moved into a small apartment with Claire's help. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms and a tiny kitchen, but it was mine. No one showed up unannounced. No one criticized how I folded laundry. No one made me feel small. Oliver was growing so fast. He smiled now, real smiles that lit up his whole face. When he laughed, it sounded like music. One day Brandon sent me an email. In it was a photo of himself at some bar event, holding a mug that said, Dad of the Year. He was smiling that same fake smile, surrounded by people I didn't recognize. The email said, Thought you'd want to see I'm doing well. I looked at that photo for exactly 5 seconds. Then I deleted it. You can't rewrite history once the truth has been told. And the truth was this. He'd chosen a party over his family. That would follow him forever. A year after Oliver was born, I got invited to speak at a women's health fundraiser. They wanted me to talk about maternal rights, about medical autonomy, about what it means to advocate for yourself when no one else will. The event was at the same venue where Patricia's gala had been held. The same ballroom where Brandon had posed for photos while I was giving birth. I stood on that stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, and I told my story. I told them about signing the medical power of attorney in secret, about giving birth without my husband, about choosing myself and my son over a marriage that had been killing me slowly. When I finished, I said one final thing. No one should ever have to give birth alone because someone else thought their reputation was more important than their life. The room erupted in applause. People stood up. Some were crying. I looked out at that crowd, at Claire in the front row holding Oliver, and I smiled. This time the applause was for me.